I signed the papers 3 weeks ago. My wife, Margaret, got the house, the cottage up north, both cars, and the business I had spent 37 years building. My lawyer practically had a stroke when I told him to give her everything. My son called me from Vancouver, voice shaking, asking if I had lost my mind. Even the mediator looked at me like I was having some kind of breakdown. But sitting here in this rented apartment above the hardware store on Main Street, looking at the single photograph I had kept, me and Margaret on our wedding day in 1986, I finally allowed myself to smile. Really smile. For the first time in 4 years, let me take you back. I met Margaret at a community dance in Winnipeg when I was 23. She was 19, studying to be a teacher with blonde hair she wore in a ponytail and a laugh that made everyone in the room turn around. I was working construction then, barely making enough to keep my truck running. But when she looked at me, I felt like I could build the whole city with my bare hands. We got married 6 months later in a small church ceremony. Her parents did not approve, thought she was throwing her life away on a guy with dirt under his fingernails and no college degree. But Margaret did not care. She believed in me. She stood beside me when I took out a loan to start my own construction company. She worked as a secretary at a law firm during the day and did our bookkeeping at night, sitting at our kitchen table with a calculator and a coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Those first years were hard, really hard. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment where the heat barely worked in winter. Margaret would wear 2 sweaters inside and never once complained. She would make casseroles that could stretch for 3 days. When I would come home covered in sawdust and cement, discouraged because another bid had fallen through, she would wrap her arms around me and say, "Tomorrow, Robert, tomorrow is going to be better." And she was right. By our 5th anniversary, I had a crew of 6 guys. By our 10th, we were bidding on commercial projects. By our 20th, Hammond Construction was the name everyone in Manitoba knew when they wanted quality work done right. We had our son, Peter, in 1989. Margaret put her teaching career on hold, said she wanted to be home with him. I remember her singing to him in the nursery we had painted together, her voice soft and gentle. She was the kind of mother who never missed a school play, who could calm any tantrum with a hug, who made every birthday feel like magic. As the company grew, Margaret became more involved. She handled all the finances, all the contracts, all the licensing and permits. She had this incredible head for numbers, could spot a problem in a budget faster than any accountant I ever hired, but she never wanted her name on anything. "It is your company, Robert," she would say. "I am just here to help." The business kept expanding. By 2015, we had 42 employees. We had built shopping centers, apartment complexes, 3 schools, and a hospital wing. The house we bought in Oakbank was everything we dreamed of. 4 bedrooms, a proper office for Margaret, and a garage big enough for my woodworking shop. We bought the cottage on Lake Winnipeg for weekends and summers. Life was good, better than good. I thought we had everything figured out. Then Margaret's brother died. Thomas had been her closest friend growing up. They had lost their parents young and had only had each other for a long time. When he passed suddenly from a heart attack at 56, something in Margaret broke. She became quiet, distant. I tried to give her space, tried to be understanding. She said she needed time. I said, "Take all the time you need." That was my first mistake. About 6 months after Thomas died, Margaret started spending a lot of time with Linda Chen, her childhood friend, who had moved back to Winnipeg after a divorce. They would go for long walks, meet for coffee, spend entire Saturdays together. I was glad Margaret had someone to talk to. Linda had always been kind, always asked about the business, always seemed genuinely interested in our lives. That was my second mistake, not seeing what was right in front of me. I noticed small things at first. Margaret started dressing differently. brighter colors, newer styles. She had always been beautiful to me, but now she was wearing makeup to go grocery shopping. She joined a gym, started talking about finding herself and rediscovering who she was. I thought it was grief. I thought she was trying to move forward. I encouraged it. That was my third mistake. One evening, in March 2021, I came home early from a job site. Margaret was on the phone in our bedroom, door closed. I heard her laughing, really laughing, in a way I had not heard in over a year. When she came out, she was flushed, said it had been Linda calling about some book club nonsense, but there was something in her eyes I had never seen before, something guilty. I started paying attention after that, really paying attention. The late-night texts she would hide when I walked in, the phone calls she would take in another room, the weekends she would spend at Linda's place, helping with home renovations. In June, I did something I am not proud of. I checked Margaret's phone while she was in the shower. There were hundreds of messages, but they were not to Linda. They were to someone named James Westwood. I sat on the edge of our bed reading through months of conversations. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. The messages were romantic, intimate, planning secret meetings, talking about a future together. When you finally leave him, one message read, we can stop hiding. I am tired of pretending. Margaret's response soon followed. I just need to handle things carefully. The business is complicated. I felt like I was drowning. 35 years of marriage, and she was planning to leave me, but she was worried about the business being complicated. That is when something clicked. I went down to my office and pulled out all our financial records, all the accounts Margaret had been managing, all the contracts and invoices. I spent 3 days going through everything, and that is when I found it. The company was not doing well. It was barely staying afloat. For the past 4 years, since 2017, Margaret had been taking out loans against our assets, refinancing the house, extending lines of credit. The business looked profitable on paper, but that was only because Margaret had gotten very good at moving money around, borrowing from one account to pay another. We were in debt, serious debt, the kind that could take everything. I kept digging. The cottage had a second mortgage I had never signed. Actually, looking at the signature, it wasn't even a good forgery. She had borrowed against our equipment. She had taken out personal loans using my business as collateral. Where had all the money gone? I hired a forensic accountant, someone from Regina, who had never heard of Hammond Construction. His name was David Park, and he was thorough. It took him 3 weeks to untangle everything. The report he gave me was 47 pages long. The summary was simple. Over 4 years, approximately $1.3 million had been systematically moved out of business accounts into a numbered account I did not have access to. The transfers were careful, spread out, disguised as legitimate business expenses. Someone would have needed complete control of our finances to pull this off. Margaret had complete control of our finances. Mr. Hammond, David said, I have to ask, did you sign off on any of these transfers? I shook my head. Then this is fraud. Clear as day. You should contact the police. But I didn't. Not yet, because I had also hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Chen, no relation to Linda. Ironically, he was a former RCMP officer who now did private work. What he found made everything even worse. James Westwood was not just Margaret's lover. He was Linda's cousin. They had been introduced 2 years ago at some family gathering. James was a real estate developer from Calgary, 48 years old, recently divorced, with a reputation for living well beyond his means. Marcus's report showed that James had been pushing Margaret to invest in his development projects. Opportunities, he called them. Luxury condos in Calgary that existed only on paper. A resort development in British Columbia that had never gotten permits. The numbered account Margaret had been transferring money into, it was jointly held by her and James, and it was empty. All $1.3 million was gone, invested in James's failed ventures. But here is what Margaret didn't know. James was also in debt, serious debt. He owed money to investors, contractors, suppliers. He had been using our money, to keep his creditors at bay, but it wasn't enough. He was being sued by 4 different parties. There were liens against his property. The man Margaret was planning to run off with was drowning. Marcus showed me photographs. Margaret and James meeting at hotels, walking hand in hand through parks in Calgary, kissing in his truck outside Linda's house. Linda wasn't just Margaret's friend. She was the accomplice, the one who would cover for Margaret, who would provide alibis, who had helped arrange meetings, some best friend. I sat with this information for 2 weeks. I didn't confront Margaret. I didn't let on that anything had changed. I went to work, came home, ate dinner with her, watched TV like everything was normal. "You have been quiet lately," Margaret said one evening. "Just tired," I said. "Big project finishing up." She smiled and patted my hand. "You work too hard. You should think about slowing down soon. You are 62, Robert. Maybe it is time to consider retirement." I nodded. "Maybe you are right." Inside, I was screaming. She was planning to leave me penniless, and she was suggesting I retire. In September, Margaret sat me down at the kitchen table. Linda was there, too, for moral support. "Robert," Margaret said, her voice gentle, "I need to be honest with you. I am not happy. I have not been happy for a long time. I think we need to separate." I looked at her, at this woman I had built a life with, at Linda sitting beside her with fake concern on her face. "I see," I said. "I want this to be amicable," Margaret continued. "I don't want to fight. I think we should split everything fairly. You keep the business. I will take the house and the cottage. We can divide the retirement accounts." Linda nodded supportively. "It is very mature of you both to handle it this way." "What about the debt?" I asked quietly. Margaret's face didn't change. "What debt?" "The business debt, the mortgages, the loans." She waved her hand dismissively. "That's business stuff. You handle all that. I am just talking about personal assets." I wanted to laugh. She thought I didn't know. She thought I was still that young construction worker who would trust her with everything. "Let me think about it," I said. Over the next 2 weeks, Margaret became impatient. She started spending even more time away. She stopped wearing her wedding ring. Peter called from Vancouver, confused because his mother wouldn't return his calls. "Dad, what's going on?" he asked. "Your mother and I are having some difficulties," I said carefully. "She wants a divorce." "It looks that way. Are you okay?" I wasn't, but I told him I was. In October, Margaret had her lawyer send papers. She wanted the house, the cottage, her car, and half the value of the business. The business that she had run into the ground. My lawyer, Frank Morrison, called me immediately. "Robert, we need to fight this. She is asking for way too much, and given the financial state of the company—" "Give her what she wants," I said. Silence on the phone. "I am sorry. What?" "Give her everything. The house, the cottage, both cars, and the business." "Robert, have you been drinking? The business is in massive debt. The forensic accounting you had done shows—" "I know what it shows, Frank. Give her the business, too. But you would be left with nothing. Less than nothing. You would be responsible for debt that was fraudulently created by her." I said, "Debt I never authorized. Transfers I never signed off on. Forgery and fraud. It is all in David Park's report." Frank was quiet for a moment, then, "You sneaky son of a... Can you make it happen?" "Making you look generous while she hangs herself?" "Yeah, I can make it happen. But Robert, she is going to come after you eventually when she realizes." "Let me worry about that. We drew up papers that made me look like the most accommodating ex-husband in Canadian history. Margaret gets the house, the cottage, both vehicles, and Hammond Construction, all assets, all operations, and all associated financial obligations. I kept my truck, my tools, and my old woodworking equipment in the garage. That was it. Frank made sure every transfer was documented, every asset, every debt, everything legally binding. When Margaret saw the papers, she could barely contain her smile. "This is very mature of you, Robert," she said. Linda, who had come along to the lawyer's office, nodded approvingly. "It is good to see you both handling this with such dignity." I signed everything. Didn't fight a single point. "You are being very generous," Margaret said. "Most men would make this difficult." "You deserve to be happy," I said. And I meant it, just not in the way she thought. The divorce was finalized in early November. Margaret got everything. I moved into the apartment above the hardware store. 2 rooms and a bathroom, about 800 square feet. My son was furious. "Dad, what the hell? You just gave her everything." "It is complicated, Peter." "Complicated? She cheated on you. Everyone knows about her and that guy from Calgary, and you just handed her your life's work." "Trust me," I said. "Trust you? How can I trust you when you won't even fight for what's yours?" He hung up on me. He didn't call for 3 weeks. People around town started talking. "Poor Robert Hammond," they said, "lost his mind after the divorce, gave his cheating wife everything." Some said Margaret must have had dirt on me. Others said I was going senile. The gossip got back to me through friends at the coffee shop. I let them believe whatever they wanted. Margaret moved James into our house before the paint, on the divorce papers, was even dry. I heard they had a big celebration dinner. Linda was there, of course. They toasted to new beginnings. Christmas came. I spent it alone in my apartment, eating takeout Chinese food. Peter sent a text. "Merry Christmas, Dad. Wish you had fought harder." I stared at that message for a long time. January arrived. Cold, gray Manitoba winter. I had taken a job as a site supervisor for a small construction outfit in Selkirk. The owner, Tom Brennan, was an old friend who didn't ask questions when I needed work. "You are overqualified for this," Tom said. "I need to stay busy," I said. The truth was, I needed to be visible. Needed everyone to see that I was working a regular job, living in a small apartment, driving an old truck. Needed everyone to see that I had nothing. February brought the first crack. I was having coffee at Tim Hortons when my phone rang. It was Frank. "Robert," he said, "you need to hear this. Margaret's lawyer just called me. Apparently, she has discovered some irregularities in the business accounts." I took a sip of coffee. "What kind of irregularities?" "The kind where there are a lot of unpaid bills and several large loans coming due. She wants to know if you knew about this before the divorce." "All the documentation was available during discovery," I said calmly. "Everything was disclosed." "That is what I told them. They are not happy." I imagine they are not. The second crack came in March. Marcus Chen called me. "Thought you would want to know," he said. "James Westwood filed for bankruptcy last week. All those development projects collapsed. He is being sued by about a dozen different creditors." "Is that so?" "His assets are being seized, including a joint account he held with your ex-wife. She is listed as a co-holder, which means she is on the hook for his debts too." I didn't say anything. "You knew," Marcus said. "You knew all along. I read the reports you gave me very carefully. Hammond Construction's debt is going to come due soon. All those loans Margaret took out, about 6 weeks, according to my calculations. She is going to lose everything, isn't she?" That would appear to be the trajectory. April was when it all fell apart. The bank called in the loans, all of them. Hammond Construction had 3 major payments due, totaling over $800,000. Margaret had 30 days to pay, or they would start seizing assets. She tried to sell the business, but I had spent 37 years building relationships in this industry. Every contractor in Manitoba knew me. When Margaret started making calls, trying to find buyers, word got around. I didn't have to sabotage anything. I just had to tell the truth when people asked. The books aren't what they seem, I would say. You might want to look very carefully at the debt structure. No one bought. Margaret tried to mortgage the house, but it turned out there was already a second mortgage she had taken out. The one with the forged signature. When the bank investigated, they found the forgery. They froze everything pending investigation. She couldn't sell the cottage either. It had liens against it from James's creditors. Turned out he had put it down as collateral for one of his failed developments. The cars were repossessed first. Both of them towed away on a Tuesday morning, while Margaret was at a lawyer's office trying to figure out how to sue me. Frank called me that afternoon. She is screaming fraud, says you deliberately hid the debt. All the financial records were available during discovery, I repeated. I signed an affidavit stating all known assets and liabilities were disclosed. Her lawyer signed off on it. She is saying you manipulated the paperwork. The forensic audit from David Park shows all the transfers were made by her. All the loans were taken out by her. All the forged signatures are hers. If anyone committed fraud, Frank, it wasn't me. Silence. Then Frank laughed. You let her take everything, knowing it was worthless. I let her take what she had already destroyed. May came warm and beautiful. The house went on the market, forced sale by the bank. It sold for less than what was owed on the mortgages. Margaret got nothing. The cottage went next, seized by one of James's creditors. Linda stopped returning Margaret's calls. Funny how fair-weather friends disappear. James moved back to Calgary, leaving Margaret with his debts and his legal problems. She got served with papers from 3 different creditors who wanted payment for James' failed ventures. The joint account she had shared with him, she was legally responsible for his obligations. In June, I got a call from Peter. Dad, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. I called you crazy. I thought you had lost your mind. But I talked to Uncle Frank. He explained what actually happened, what she did, what you knew. Your mother made her choices. She stole from you. She cheated on you. She destroyed your business and then tried to take it in the divorce. Yes? And you let her, because you knew she was taking on all the debt she had created. I took what mattered, I said, my integrity, my self-respect, my clean conscience. She has been calling me, Peter said, asking for money, asking if she can stay with me in Vancouver. That is between you and her. I told her no. Is that terrible? That is your decision to make. We were quiet for a moment. Then Peter said, I am proud of you, Dad. The patience it must have taken, the restraint. I spent 37 years building something, I said. She spent 4 years destroying it. I just made sure she understood the full scope of her accomplishment. July brought the final chapter. Margaret filed for bankruptcy. Everything she had taken in the divorce was gone. The house, the cottage, the cars, the business, all of it seized or sold to pay debts. She moved in with a cousin in Brandon, got a job as a cashier at a grocery store, posted on Facebook about starting over and finding peace. Some of her friends commented with support. Most stayed silent. James Westwood's bankruptcy included criminal charges for fraud. Turned out those development projects weren't just failures. They were deliberate schemes to defraud investors. Margaret wasn't charged, but her name came up repeatedly in the investigation. Linda Chen moved to Alberta. I heard through the grapevine that her family had disowned James, and she couldn't handle the shame of being associated with the scandal. As for me, I worked for Tom through the summer, saved up some money, started bidding on small projects under a new company name, Hammond and Son Construction. Peter moved back from Vancouver in August to help run it. "We are starting from scratch," he said. "Best way to start?" I said. We took on a renovation job first, then a small commercial project. Word spread that I was back. The same contractors who wouldn't touch Margaret's poison business were happy to work with me. By September, we had more work than we could handle. Peter turned out to have his mother's head for numbers and his father's work ethic. Together, we built something clean, something honest. I never moved back to Oakbank, kept the apartment above the hardware store. It was enough, more than enough. One evening in October, exactly 1 year after I had signed those divorce papers, I was closing up the worksite when I saw a car pull up. Margaret got out. She looked different, older, tired. She was wearing clothes I recognized from 10 years ago. "Robert," she said. "Margaret," I responded. "Can we talk?" I nodded. We sat on the tailgate of my truck. "I know what you did," she said finally. "I gave you everything you asked for. You gave me all the debt I had created. You knew the whole time. You knew." "Yes." "Why didn't you just report me? Why didn't you have me arrested for fraud?" I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't the 19-year-old girl with the ponytail anymore. She wasn't the woman who had believed in me when no one else did. She was a stranger who had made choices I couldn't understand. "Because I spent 35 years loving you," I said, "and I wanted you to understand what you had done, not through a trial or a jail sentence, through consequences." She started crying. "I lost everything." "You gave everything away to a man who was using you for schemes that never existed. You destroyed what we built, Margaret. I just made sure you own that destruction completely." "I am sorry," she whispered. "I know. Can you ever forgive me?" I thought about that for a long time, about the girl who had made me coffee when I was studying for my contractor's license, about the woman who had painted the nursery and sung to our son, about the partner who had worked beside me for decades. "I already have," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going back." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Peter won't talk to me. That is between you and him. He has every right to hate me." "He doesn't hate you. He is just disappointed. There is a difference." Margaret stood up. "Your new company is doing well. I heard about it. We are getting by. I am glad. You deserve success. You always did." She paused. "I destroyed something beautiful, something we built together. I know that now." "Yes," I said. "You did." She got back in her car. Before she drove away, she looked at me one more time. "I really am sorry, Robert." "I know," I said. "Take care of yourself, Margaret." I watched her tail lights disappear down the road. Peter called me an hour later. "Mom just called me. She is crying. Says she talked to you." "She did." "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I said. And I meant it. I am okay. You know what I realized, Dad? All those people who said you were crazy for giving her everything. They didn't understand. You were giving her exactly what she deserved. She wanted it all. So, you gave her all of it, including all the consequences. Sometimes, the best revenge is letting people drown in the choices they have made. Grandma would have said, "Karma has a long memory." I smiled. Your grandmother was a smart woman. That night, sitting in my small apartment, I thought about the path I had taken. I could have fought Margaret in court, could have exposed her fraud immediately, could have sent her to jail, but that wouldn't have taught her anything. That wouldn't have made her understand. Instead, I had given her exactly what she had asked for. Everything. The house she had mortgaged, the business she had destroyed, the debt she had created, the future she had gambled away. I had given her the complete and total fruits of her deception, and in doing so, I had kept my integrity intact. I documented everything legally. I disclosed everything properly. When the smoke cleared, I was the one who had been defrauded. I was the victim with clean hands and clear conscience. The court saw it that way, too. When Margaret tried to sue me for fraudulent non-disclosure, her case was dismissed in about 15 minutes. The judge looked at the forensic audit, looked at the forged signatures, looked at the illegal transfers, and said, "Mrs. Hammond, it appears you defrauded yourself. 3 weeks ago, I ran into one of Margaret's old friends at the grocery store. She pulled me aside. 'Robert, I have to tell you,' she said quietly. 'A lot of us didn't understand what you did. We thought you were being weak or foolish, but now we know you were being brilliant.' 'I was being patient,' I said. 'Is there a difference?' 'Patience is waiting for the truth to reveal itself. Brilliance is knowing it will.' She smiled. 'Margaret always said you were smarter than you looked. She was right about that.' Now it is November again. Full circle. Peter and I are bidding on a hospital expansion project. The same kind of work Hammond Construction used to do. The same clients who worked with me for 30 years are excited to work with us again. 'You are back,' one of them said. 'We missed you.' 'I never left,' I said. 'Just took a detour.' The apartment above the hardware store has become home. I built custom shelves for my books, set up my woodworking space in the second room. I have coffee with Tom Brennan every Tuesday. I see my son every day. I have less money than I did 2 years ago. I have less property, less assets, less of everything people use to measure success. But I have something Margaret can never take away. I have my reputation, my integrity, my peace of mind. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that when she destroyed what we had built, when she gambled everything on a fraud and a fantasy, I didn't fight her. I didn't stop her. I just stepped aside and let her have it all. Every single bit of it. The debt, the shame, the consequences.